Hey everybody, it's Funny here once again. Hope you're doing well today. I'm rambling about the Knobula Kickcain. It sounds like this. Okay, let's jump right into this one. So, first, because it's fairly recent, I've moved the housekeeping down into the description below. Check that out. Nothing's changed. And today we are going to thank Matt for lending this to me to make this video on. I appreciate you. Let's talk about it straight away. So what is it? It is the Knobula Kickcain 12 HP kick drum module. But I will say right off the rip, I think my misconception with this one, at least originally when I owned it myself before, not before, when I was borrowing it, is that it would fit in nicely alongside the rest of my drum kit, and the Kickcain is kind of not that. It's more special, I would say. And I think like a lot of the focus on the part of the Kickcain is going to be on the side chaining. So why don't we demonstrate that with a nice big synth sound. So let me go through the panel here. So one thing you can do right off the rip is I'm just going to completely take out our kick drum itself, but leave its compression envelope. So you're going to hear some pulsing and depth here. And it gets really crunchy. And I don't mean distorted crunchy, I mean it will really chop the input off. So 12 HP, first there's a drive control, a tune control, but I want to first talk about the pink section here being the compressor section. So what is it? A couple different modes. There's a depth of compression, so you'll hear what's being applied is a side chain from the decay of the kick voice itself, and I'll get into the kick voice in one moment, but at its most deep it'll basically cut out the other voices completely, or at full depth I should say. A little bit less. It's a subtle effect, and off completely. No side chaining. There's also a little bit of control to the envelope side, like you're kind of, there's no attack on the part of the drum voice, but you do get attack on the part of the side chain. And I hope you can hear that okay. Let's turn that up. So here's our attack. And everything on board here, I'll just say, in a good way, is really straightforward. Now, whether or not this is suited to your setup is going to be totally up to you, but I will say, on the workflow side, super straightforward, and I really appreciate that. Let's hear it again. So again, the kick is going to be there, but give me a moment to get to it. So this is the normal kick compression. If we bring in the kick, it makes your mix sound really tight. And I will say, I think like the entire point of the Kickcain is to have it sort of as probably your only drum voice at a, and this is totally a reasonable setup. I think that's like, this probably, and this is probably why they made it, will benefit a lot of people if you just have a URX system that's all VCOs and oscillators and synth voices and generative and what have you, and you don't have any drums at all, and you want to bring in one sort of tempo driving beat. I think the Kickcain is totally built for that. And if we take our kick out, I want to try and focus on just listen to the compression. So that's the normal. This is the spectral level 1. And so you'll immediately hear that because it's not just taken off of the decay, it's not going to be as compressed. If we bring in our kick, it's still going to find room in the mix to kind of squash it down. But for me, it's probably, I don't want to say not as good of a thing, but it probably isn't as good of a thing. I like the nasty compression envelope. I like it to pump, right? But if you have taste, you probably prefer these spectral versions that find EQ for the compression. And the same attack applies without leveling. I find this is really subtle, so it's hard to know if this works without the level or not. But you can definitely hear if we bring it in. That as you bring in that compression now, our mix is nice and tight. And I think if there's anything to be said for the Kickcain, that is its most valuable feature, I would say. Now, if we go through, I'm just going to bring this back down to the normal one because I like it. And I'm going to say, bring in my other drum voices because for me, I want a full kit. And people a lot of times in my videos mention how they feel my drum beats are too busy, and I appreciate that, but I like them that way. I like having a hat that's going, and I have, without adding another level of mix after the Kickcain, kind of makes this a little tough. But, you know what, maybe just to demonstrate the other ones, I'll take out my other drum voices, and we'll just hear drum and bass, right? And what does the actual Kickcain sound like? Well, you know what, actually, let's take out our bass completely just so we can focus on it. Let's hit the decay and overdrive it, and it can donk. And I really, really appreciate that about it. Sidechain out, decay's down. And then there's a click, which is sort of, I think, actually sample based on the Kickcain. Kind of sounds like a snare, like it's adding that sound of a kick drum's head, but I don't know, it sounds like almost snare territory at the beginning, so I like to keep it really subtle, just a little bit. Punch, if you bring it up, it'll start to really, it almost, I feel like they wrote this in a way that they intentionally made it zappy at the end. I don't really care for the zappy, we'll just go back a little hair. But it can really go. There's your tune at the top. There's a manual trigger. We always appreciate that. I just like to have a big light indicating when the kick's going on. Decay. And then bend for the pitch bend. Let's hear this actually. And I believe this is going to be positive to the right and negative to the left. Yep. I will say that the tune knob feels a little bit like they didn't quite let you go as low as you might want for me. Like, this is fine, but I am maxing it out at sort of a usable level, right? I kind of would like a little more range, that's okay. There is reverb here, and I'm going to also say on this front, this one, to me, is bizarre because I like the reverb, I like how it sounds, but I want it on my incoming signal, right? So it's like my bass drum is in this wall of reverb and the incoming stuff is just kind of getting clipped on top of it. Wouldn't I want that reverb applied to everything? So for that reason, I'm going to keep it pretty low, and we should turn this down for a moment, and I'll just let you hear it. Shorter decay, huge reverb. It's good, but There's also an effects loop, which again, I don't know, I feel like when you're getting to that depth, maybe there's a space consideration you're set up, but I wouldn't myself use it so much. Let's send. We go into the reverb. Sorry, there's also a bass cut, so let's bring this decay down. Lots of kick drums have this, and I appreciate it. It can do a little bit of that. I don't find the drum on board is too nasty that you need that. It's not like, again, I feel like they limited the controls a little bit, that it isn't entirely necessary. Like, it just sounds better without that bass cut to my ears, if you're hearing that. We're gonna modulate our decays though, and one of the complaints that I was reading online and that Matt said too, not a lot of patch points on this thing, so depending on your setup, that's okay. It doesn't really offer a ton of modular exploration on that front. I think Knobula stuff generally, they like a big focus on MIDI stuff, and I don't think this one so much, but I know the Polycinematic, the Pianophonic, they really didn't do a lot of analog modulation points, and they instead want you to send it MIDI over CCs and take that or leave that. The big points on this one are there, but if you're looking for something super modulatable, super deep to chew on, maybe not the Kickcain. But if you want something simple and straightforward, which I don't mean that in a knocking way at all, I think that's really something that's missing from a lot of your rack, then this is it. I don't love how the reverb is though, which is a shame because one, it doesn't, you can't route the internal, as far as I know, unless there's a jump switch on the back that I'm not aware of, but the manual didn't say anything about it either. The reverb, I would like to send everything through, so it's all sitting on the same plane, I guess. And also, it doesn't quite sound as nice as, I remember the Polycinematic for all the issues I had with it. And there isn't a video on that. But I remember the Polycinematic's reverb sounding really good. And this one, I don't know if it's because it's supposed to be bass-centric, but it just seems a little muddy. I don't know. Like in a blown-out muddiness. And maybe it is supposed to be for kick drum sound design purposes. So I always keep it to a minimum. But let's bring in the rest of our voice, and we'll use that to play us out. What do you think of the Knobula Kickcain? You let me know in the comments what you think. Do all that crap that Alphabet's always on me to plug to you. And like, comment, subscribe, do all those things that don't cost you anything to support the channel. I appreciate you. Take care, and I will talk to you soon.